Still with us, Tommy?
Right.
What are you, some kind of parrot?
Right.
Welcome to Random Movie Time. Today we are going to discuss the classic 1979 picture Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, written by Dan O'Bannon, starring an amazing ensemble cast: Sigourney Weaver, Ian Holm, Harry Dean Stanton, Tom Skerritt, Veronica Cartwright, John Hurt, Yaphet Kotto, and Bolaji Badejo. The movie follows the crew of the Nostromo, who were in deep space on the way back to Earth, hauling ore. They are awoken from their cryogenic sleep from a distress call from a nearby planet. It's their duty to go and investigate, so they do so. And it's a spooky movie, let me tell you. So because this movie is such a classic and we've seen it, we've decided to discuss our experiences with it this time more than review it necessarily. Because what can you say about a perfect movie, really? Tommy, what are your thoughts?
So when it first came out in 1978, I was too little. My older brother saw it though, and he described it to me. And they were very, very smart with the advertising for this movie, because they never ever showed the alien back in those days in any advertising. So you only saw the creature if you saw the movie in the theater back in those days. And my brother told me, Tommy, if you see this movie, if you see this alien, you will shit your pants. And I think he was right. If I was 8 years old, I wouldn't have been able to take this movie. It's just way too intense. But 6 years later, the sequel comes out. I was 15, or 7 years later, and I was like, okay, I'm ready now. First, I'll rent the original to prepare for Aliens. And so I rented it on VHS, loved it, fell in love with it, ended up buying it on VHS, later DVD, then Blu-ray, and now 4K. And what an awesome experience. I mean, it's a perfect movie. If you're a science fiction buff, if you're a horror buff, you'll love it. Such a groundbreaking creature design by H.R. Giger. I don't think the movie monster here has ever been topped. Like, every time you try and see a new movie monster, it's just sort of like a pale imitation of this guy. So it's absolutely ahead of its time, revolutionary, and it just gave people nightmares for years and years after they saw it. But a beautifully shot movie. You know, Ridley Scott always loves to make his movies look as good as possible, and just amazing cinematography, amazing actors. Like, every actor in this movie knocks it out of the park. It easily could have had that B-movie vibe, and it sort of does. They're still sort of going for that sort of 1950s, you know, haunted house or B-movie or monster movie type of thing, but really the actors just knock it out of the park, and it's just so well done. Everybody speaks with so much conviction. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and Dan O'Bannon, the writer for this movie, did say that he was very influenced by those old sci-fi movies, Forbidden Planet for one.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, it does come through in a really good way.
Totally. What did you think of this movie, Shannon?
I am a fan of this movie. This movie to me is almost perfect. The acting is incredible. The special effects, the sets, the costumes, they put so much detail into it. And it's so hard to believe that this was filmed in 1978 sometimes. I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Bolaji Bodejo. I hope I'm saying his name right. He is the alien. It's crazy. Like, who would have thought there was a real human being inside of that costume? Just incredible.
Yeah, apparently they found a very tall foreign exchange student, a graphic artist in London at a pub one time, and they're like, this is the tallest, skinniest man we've ever seen. We've got to hire him to be the alien. And he did a great job. Kind of underrated when you think of all the movie monsters, you know, people like Lon Chaney and Boris Karloff. And this guy, he doesn't get mentioned enough because really, you know, he was so terrifying in his movements and everything. I thought it was just great.
Yeah, it was like watching a spectacular dance performance. It's just insane. One other thing that hit home for me about this movie was Sigourney Weaver and her character. Originally, they wrote it they didn't have a female or a male in mind. They just wrote it as a role, and I was blown away by this strong female lead. I think that modern cinema, modern playwrights could take a page from Alien in that regard. Because it feels real in this movie. It doesn't feel contrived. Everything, the interaction between the characters, it's so natural. The dialogue is so natural and so well done. And I love the fact that they didn't make her as if she was the be-all and end-all. You know, there was still some, for example, when she was telling them to follow the quarantine protocol, and they wouldn't listen to her. I mean, well, there were other reasons for that, but, you know, I love the fact that they didn't make her the perfect, strong female woman who, you know, doesn't make mistakes and everything like that. She felt relatable. She wasn't, you know, high above me kind of thing. And of course, she's a hero. She's a crazy big hero.
Yeah. Nobody listened to her. And then look what happened. I won't tell you what happened if you haven't seen the movie. But if you haven't seen the movie at this point, you probably won't see the movie, or it's probably been spoiled for you already. But another thing I loved about it was how they rarely showed the alien in this movie. It was really suspenseful the whole time, and the pace was perfect. You know, it's not like a shoot 'em up action movie, you know what I mean? It's suspenseful. It's a thriller. You don't know what's going to happen next. And then there's, of course, the backstory with Ian Holmes' character and the corporation. I think that really spoke to me too. The reason why I say it's a near perfect movie, and this is, again, nitpicking, the only special effect that doesn't hold up today is when the Nostromo gets blown up. Like, mind you, I've never been to space,
So maybe that's what blow-ups in space look like in real life.
Mm-hmm. Had sort of that nuclear meltdown kind of explosion rather than usually a spaceship exploding. You see all these pieces fly off of it. Whereas this one looked sort of like, there was an atom bomb right in the center of the screen. So maybe that is what it would look like when you detonate nuclear engines. I don't know.
It just looked fake, but I mean, it was, that I wouldn't mark them down for, because the time, I mean, everything else looked amazing.
Mm-hmm. I did see this movie a couple of times on the big screen. So as a kid, I was just able to rent it because I was too little when it first hit the theaters. But then they came out with a director's cut, I think in 2004 for the 25th anniversary. So I was able to see that in the cinema. And the funny thing was, I went with some people who had never seen it. And they were shouting and screeching at all the parts. And I was like, this is great. This is how it would have been to see it back in 1979, Apparently when they first showed it at a preview, somebody in the audience said, "Leave that fucking cat behind and get out of there." And so when they heard that audience members say that, they were like, okay, we're on to something. We've got them hooked, Yeah.
And you know what? Back then, people still applauded at the end of movies, right?
Yeah.
They still gave them standing ovations and everything. That's right. Too.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, that cat. So cute. I'm so glad she saved the kitty. But, I mean, those were some of my thoughts. And I love the whole backstory about how it all began, too. I mean, Dan O'Bannon was hired on to write for Dune, for Jodorowsky's Dune.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we all know that fell through. and that's how he, became aware of H.R. Giger, and then it just spawned all of this. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, they pretty much got the whole crew together that they were gonna have with the earlier version of the Dune film, which fell through.
Yeah.
Before David Lynch got assigned to that movie.
Yeah.
And so, all the visual effects and H.R. Giger, of course, and the writers, they all sort of got a second chance to make a sci-fi epic and got together and made Alien. So.
Well, now look at today. How many movies are in this franchise, and how many graphic novels, and how many stories, and
comic books and action figures.
Yeah, it's just
video games.
Yeah, it's just exploded. I think it was one of those paradigm shifts in cinema. To me, it would be on par with 2001: A Space Odyssey in that way.
And that heavily influenced Ridley Scott. Apparently, he was that was the look for sci-fi movies, and they sort of copied that to a degree, with the space hardware and the realistic effects and everything like that.
Well, man, poof. I guess that I'm giving it 5 face huggers out of 5.
Me too. Solid 5 face huggers out of 5. Absolute classic masterpiece. Can't be beat. Will never be beat. It's just a perfect movie.
And it holds up to this day.
Yeah.
We just watched it, and it's still amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that'll do it for us today. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you next time on Random Movie Time.